Critics in Congress and on television were quick to attack President Obama's speech at West Point this week, but perhaps the most telling reaction of all came from the cadets themselves. Watch the reception they gave our Commander-in-Chief.
Our 44th President of the United States, President Barack Obama. Mr. President.
Whoa, no standing, tepid applause at best. Compare that to the reception West Point gave President Bush at the end of '08. And remember, that was hardly the high point of his presidency.
Please join me again in a warm welcome to the President of the United States.
Ouch. Well, let's bring in Dr. Ben Carson this morning to weigh in on a number of topics this morning, including that one there, the president's response. Do you think that that's part and parcel of the response that the president has put forth in his foreign policy around the world, Doctor, that we got this sort of tepid response at West Point? What do you think?
Well, you know, you look at all the generals that have been fired. You look at the fact that we left our people in Benghazi and said, you know, it's too dangerous. It's no use. We don't have your back. You look at what's going on with the VA. You look at what's happening around the world. Why would the troops be enthusiastic about that? I've managed to talk to a lot of people in the military, and they tell me that the level of enthusiasm has decreased dramatically. That's dangerous for us because the military should be enthusiastic about their jobs, and we have a real obligation to make sure that they understand how much we appreciate them.
And Dr. Carson, you said let's take a look at the VA, so let's do that. Yesterday, Secretary Eric Shinseki announced his resignation, more of a forced resignation after both Democrats and Republicans had been calling for this. You know, getting rid of him, is that going to solve the problem there at the VA, or is it much deeper?
Well, it solves the problem of many people calling for his resignation, but it doesn't do anything about the problems at the VA. I've had an opportunity to work in VA hospitals, and I must say there are many very fine people who are dedicated to our veterans. However, there's so many layers of bureaucracy between those veterans and the people who want to take care of them that it makes the system entirely inefficient. And this is exactly what I'm concerned about with the Affordable Care Act. You know, taking people's most precious thing, their health and their health care, and putting it in a system where there are so many bureaucrats. We don't need that. We can do so much better than that. We have adequate resources. We have adequate ideals. And if we can just start working together and forget about this my way or the highway stuff, we can take care of all of our citizens in a way that puts the health care in their hands, brings the whole medical system into the free market economy, which will control pricing and will control efficiency.
Huh. Could you say the same about Obamacare? Is that the way, assuming we don't repeal Obamacare, do we fix it using the same means you just described?
I'm not sure it's fixable. I'm in the camp of replacement because of the fundamental shift of power from the people to the government. That is my primary objection to the system, not so much the poor rollout in the computer system and the raising prices and the hidden taxes and all the bureaucracy and on I could go. Yes, those are bad things, but those pale in comparison to the fact that the people have shifted to the government the power to control the most important thing they have. Once that happens, it's a downward spiral historically. Go back and read about how that happens in countries. We don't want that in America.
Well, Doctor, this week, with all of the other things happening with the VA, with foreign policy issues overseas, announcements about Afghanistan and so on, the president took some time out on Wednesday to have a summit on football and concussions. And here's what legendary coach Lou Holtz has to say about it and why he thinks the president is weighing in on this and trying to assert his authority in the NFL. Take a listen.
I understand why he wouldn't like it because, number one, if you're going to play football, you have to be held accountable. You have to be responsible. You have an obligation to other people. You have to work hard. You have to sacrifice. Doesn't matter about race. Doesn't matter about creed, about financial status. It's all about productivity and what you do.
All right, obviously you're a neurosurgeon, so you have a particular interest in this area, and you can weigh in on this. What do you think about the president weighing in on the NFL and concussions?
Well, is it an area of concern for some people? Absolutely. have many of the teams taken precautions now to make sure that we don't have repeated concussions, because we know that those can be quite deleterious? Yes, that has happened also. Is this a priority right now with all the problems that are going on? Absolutely not. And I think wisdom dictates that we concentrate on the things that are really having a major impact on society and not try to divert attention to something else.
All right, Dr. Carson, we've got a big bus there behind you. You're about to go on the One Nation tour. What do you think that we can all do as Americans to save our future?
Well, first of all, we need to be knowledgeable. Americans have to understand that we are the people, we are the pinnacle of power, and we are the ones who decide the direction of the country. But when we go into a voting booth and we look for a D or an R or a name that looks familiar, we really are shirking our responsibilities of being knowledgeable, and we end up getting what we have. Congress has a 90% disapproval rate, but we return people to Congress at a rate of 90%, which means we're obviously not doing our job. And we have to equip ourselves with knowledge. Knowledge is a formidable foe of falsehood and a formidable ally of truth. It'll be very difficult for people to deceive us with flowery words when we actually have a good understanding of what's going on. Also, we the people must recognize that we are not each other's enemies. The real enemies are those who drive wedges into any possible crack so they can create, a war on women, age wars, income wars, racial wars, any kind of war. And of course, that's straight out of the book of Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals, Divide and Conquer. We must be smarter than that. We, the American people, have to stop allowing ourselves so easily to be manipulated and use this tremendous brain that God gave us to analyze things. We can solve the problems that we have in this country quite readily. And in the book, at the end of each chapter, there are action steps that each individual American can take, collectively and individually, to save our nation.
Dr. Ben Carson on bus tour across this fruited plain. Thanks a lot for joining us, Doctor. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Doc.
Absolutely.